Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. It's a pretty confronting statistic. Almost 6 million Australians have struggled to make debt repayments in the last 12 months as the cost of living crisis hits home. Just as alarming, though, is the fact that 30% of people haven't asked for help from their bank or lender. In fact, they wouldn't ask for help from their bank or lender. It's prompted a major campaign from ASIC, the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, to make sure that Australians who need help know that it's available. Alan Kirkland is a commissioner at ASIC. Alan, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Great to be here, Sean.
We know we're in a cost of living crisis, but did the statistics surprise you that almost half of all Australians with debt have struggled to make repayments?
I think that level of people who've experienced some sort of financial hardship in the last 12 months did surprise us a bit. But the way we asked the question is really, have you had any trouble making, or have you been concerned about making repayments any time in the last 12 months? So it doesn't necessarily mean that all of those people missed a repayment, but certainly a lot of people have been in that situation where they have been worried about whether they're going to make their repayments. And that is, as I guess you acknowledged in your intro, one of the key reasons that we wanted to turn this into a campaign and go out and really raise awareness of the basic options that are available to people.
Do you get a sense, and maybe you have data on it, but at least a sense that it is worse now than it has been for a while?
Well, in general, the levels of arrears are getting towards pre-COVID levels. So to put it in that context, they're not at alarming levels, but what we are seeing is signs of an increase in the number of people that are in hardship and reaching out to their lender for assistance. So ASIC put out another report a couple of weeks ago where we looked at hardship assistance from mid-22 through to the end of 23, particularly looking at home lending. And we found that in the final quarter of 2023, the number of hardship notices given to home lenders was 54% higher than in the previous year. So there are signs that the number of people reaching out for help are actually increasing, even if the numbers of people in arrears are not yet at alarming levels.
Okay, there are still a stack of people who said they just wouldn't reach out and ask for help. Why is that?
Well, a lot of people just don't realise that they can. That was a key barrier. In fact, over half of the people we surveyed didn't know that they could go to their lender and ask for assistance. Then for people who perhaps were aware of that, if they felt they needed some extra assistance in making that request, they didn't know where to go. And then there are a range of emotional barriers, stress and anxiety. Obviously, if you're in financial hardship, often it's due to other things that are happening in your life. So people are already in a heightened emotional state, trying to juggle a number of things. That can be a barrier. And then for some people, it's feelings of having failed or shame or embarrassment that really hold them back from reaching out. And I guess we're really trying through this work that we're doing now to try and help people to get over those barriers and just take the first step.
Because I'm sure for many, many people, it's kind of not something they did. It's just life. It might be economic circumstances. It might be losing a job. It might be interest rates rising. It's not personal for many people, I'm sure, Alan.
That's a really important message to get out. Financial hardship is something that can happen to anybody. It will sometimes be to economic circumstances, and certainly cost of living pressures are the biggest reason that people have cited in this research. But it can also be unexpected events. It might be a sudden illness. It means you've got a bunch of medical expenses. It might be because you suffered a drop in income, getting less hours at work, or you had a casual job that you've lost. There are a whole range of reasons that can mean that people suddenly find themselves having difficulty making their commitments. And when we talk to financial counsellors working on the National Debt Helpline, they say that they are seeing people who might, for instance, be people in double income families who've been fine meeting their mortgage repayments until now, but then something happens and suddenly they need help.
Stay with me, Alan. We'll be back in a minute. My guest this morning is ASIC Commissioner Alan Kirkland. One of the stats that, I really liked, because this is me through and through, is about 50% of those who wouldn't seek hardship assistance avoid it because they're worried it will cost them more in the long term. And any time when we all go through times where it is difficult to get your mortgage for the month, I always worry that if I don't pay it, it's going to cost me more in the long term. Does it? I suppose the interest, the longer it takes you to pay back, the more interest you pay. But is that an issue for most people?
So it can result in higher costs, but it's a relatively minor factor to consider in the context of financial hardship. So if you're in a situation where what you really need is to have your payments reduced for, say, 3 months while you sort things out, yes, in all likelihood, the amounts by which the payments have been reduced in that period still need to be repaid, and you may end up paying a bit more interest over the life of the mortgage. But in the scheme of things, that's much better than ending up with arrears accruing and having to unwind a much bigger financial mess. So we're really trying to say to people, actually, the whole point of being able to reach out to a lender and say, I need a bit of assistance to get me through some tough times, is to actually put you in the driving seat. So you're able to stay in control of your financial situation. You're ultimately able to meet your repayments and ideally able to repay the whole loan and get on with your life. So it's really important that people understand this is a regime that's there to help people in trouble.
Okay. What about the flip side, the lenders? So it might be a big bank, it might be one of the smaller banks, it might be a non-bank. What are they obliged to do for their customers?
The lenders have got, anybody who's lending to individuals has really clear obligations under the National Credit Code. So under the National Credit Code, if a consumer who has a loan says to their lender, I'm worried that I may not be able to make my repayments, the lender is required to consider that and consider whether to vary the credit contract. And what that can mean in practice is reducing repayments for a period of time, or even pausing them, or perhaps reducing an interest rate. As I was saying before, it's just giving someone a bit of help to get through a difficult period. And the lenders are required to consider that you've given them that notice and to respond within 21 days. And if they don't, then they're in breach of the National Credit Code. And when we see really serious failures, then ASIC has shown that we're willing to take enforcement action, which can include taking serious action in court.
So if a customer feels the lender hasn't done the right thing, what's the first step for them?
Well, you've got also clear rights to complain. So if you've told your lender that you're worried about making your repayments, you're not happy with the response they've given to you, then you can make a complaint to them and they have to review that complaint through their internal function. And then if you're not happy with that response, you can go to the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, which is an independent ombudsman service that can make binding determinations that lenders have to comply with. And we encourage people to use those complaint rights if they're not happy. And then ASIC sort of looking over the system, we watch what's happening with those patterns of complaints, and AFCA reports to us if they see particular problems being repeated within a particular lender. And that's another, I guess, source of information that feeds into our decisions around where we might need to take enforcement action.
ASIC's been very busy, Alan, because, you're in the news all the time. There was a report the other day that we were talking about on the show. It showed that some lenders have made it too difficult for people to ask for help, with applicants giving up on the process. Is this all part of the same, well, it's the same genre, I suppose, but how does that fit in with what we're talking about today?
It's all part of the same theme. The report we released a few weeks ago was looking at the lenders' responses, and we did indeed find a number of problems with the ways in which lenders were responding when consumers told them that they were in hardship, and we're watching very closely to see how the lenders improve their practices. Now we've delivered those findings. And then, having done that piece of work, looking at how the lenders were handling this situation, we were keen to understand the consumer side. So what did people who borrow money know about this system? How do they experience it? Are there barriers? Do they feel confident reaching out for assistance? So this is really, I guess, the other side of that picture. And we're really trying to encourage more people, if they land in these situations, to reach out to their lender. And at the same time, we've got pressure on lenders to make sure that people are treated more fairly when that happens.
Alan, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thanks, Sean.
That was ASIC Commissioner Alan Kirkland. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, business news for people who make their own decisions. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.